Now, there's a 3-letter word. I know people are worried about 4-letter words, but here's a 3-letter word that's actually much more dangerous than any 4-letter word. Let. You have to let. See, Christianity doesn't want to talk about this very much. They don't want to talk about the fact that it's a process of you being involved in letting. See, they want to make it sound like it's all done by fiat. He's going to wave his magic hand or tweak his nose or blink his eyes at you, and all of a sudden everything's going to be wonderful and you're going to have this mind in you. Well, Paul certainly didn't think that. Okay, Shaul thought you needed to let this mind be in you. And by the way, that's very consistent with all of Scripture. That he's not forcing anybody. The Creator does not force people. He is giving you an opportunity that you can choose to avail yourself of, and then you can let that happen or not happen. You can say no, or you can yield and say yes. You can become hard and not let the potter mold you, or you can become pliable and let him mold you into whatever he wants to mold you into. But it all starts in the head. It starts with the thoughts. It starts in the mind. It all begins there. And so he says, look, to have all these things work out where you have this same love, one in being, out of purpose, and doing none of selfishness and self-conceit, and being humble and considering others better than yourselves, it all is going to start with a different mind. The worldly mind, the conformed worldly mind, is all about me. It's all about self. It's a selfish mind. It's an unloving mind. There's no compassion in it. And so some of us would have to say, okay, well, I'm not like that, so I must have the mind of Yeshua. Well, most of us have a mixed mindset. It's a polluted mind. There is some of this good stuff in most of us. Some of us are very loving and compassionate. Some of us are not that selfish, and we do put others above ourselves. But the thing is it a pure mind of Yeshua, or is it a mixed and polluted mind that still has some world in it? And he says, look, you have to let this mind be in you, which was also in Messiah Yeshua, who, now listen, now it's going to tell us what that mind is. He's going to now describe what that looks like in action. He says, the same Messiah whose mind you need to let in you, he is the one who, being in the form of Elohim, did not regard equality with Elohim a matter to be grasped. And so here he says, look, he says, he did not regard equality with Elohim a matter to be grasped, but emptied himself, taking the form of a servant, and came to be in the likeness of men. And having been found in a fashion as a man, he humbled himself and became obedient unto death, death even of a stake. So now what mind are we talking about? A mind that's willing to empty yourself, becoming a servant, and to be able to be humbled and obedient unto death. So it wasn't just talking about, see, you got to remember, you got to connect these dots. It's not just talking about being compassionate, loving, putting others' interests above yourself. See, all of a sudden we're not talking about that anymore, are we? But we are. Because to do it the right way, the way Elohim wants us to do it, the way Abba wants us to do it, we have to do it in the form of an emptied servant, humbling ourselves even unto death in obedience. See, but if I just took that soundbite of the first 4 verses, there's no obedience in any of that. Do you see obedience in those first 4 verses? Nope. It says to be merciful and compassionate and loving and esteem others above yourself and not be conceited and selfish. But he says, look, that mind that needs to be in you in verse 5 is connecting all of that stuff to the rest of the story, which is obedience. Obedience even unto death. That's the mind you need to be let into you. Do you have a mind that is willing to be obedient even unto death? And I want to tell you right now, and I'll speak of myself first, I don't see it. Generally speaking, I don't see it. Now, you want to feel like I'm judging you and attacking you? I'm sorry. I just don't see it. I hear people all the time making excuses to do this or to do that or do this or do that or not do this because they don't want to be obedient because it's inconvenient or it's going to step on somebody's toes or somebody they love is not going to love them so much anymore or treat them badly. He said, obedient unto death. Obedient unto death. Death even of a stake. Therefore, now look at that verse 9 now. This is what drives him, though. This is what drove Yeshua, should be driving you. He says, Elohim, therefore, what does therefore mean? It means because of what we just read, Elohim therefore has highly exalted him and given him the name which is above every name, that at the name of Yeshua every knee should bow, of those in heaven and of those on the earth and of those under the earth, and every tongue should confess that Yeshua Messiah is Master, to the esteem of Elohim the Father. Why is he worthy of all of that? Because he was obedient unto death. And he humbled himself, took on the form of a servant, and demonstrated his submission fully to the Father's plans and desires. Because we connect this back to Romans 12, where it says in Romans 12 that we need to be able to take all of this mind and take this mind to be able to figure out what is the well-pleasing desire of Elohim. He says, look, you need to be set apart, well-pleasing Elohim, your reasonable worship. He says, and have your mind transformed by you could be transformed by the renewing of your mind so that you prove what is a good and well-pleasing and perfect desire of Elohim. So why? What is the point of proving it unless you're going to then walk it and live it? So that's where the obedience kicks in. So he wants you to have this mind which is going to transform and conform you into the image of his Son so that you can then know what's well-pleasing and the perfect desire that he has so that you can actually then do it. So you can take that understanding and embrace it in your life and walk it out in your life as a light then to the nations, to all those around you. So that's where this connection is between Philippians 2 and Romans 12. Because Romans 12 tells you that you need to not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. What mind? The mind that you need to be changing into the mind of Yeshua.